So I'd like to introduce Alan Meyer of Meyer Oil. He operates the Mach 1 stores here in Southern Illinois, where we're sitting today. And Alan, how about you take a few minutes, tell the audience how you got to where you are today and about your organization.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. I appreciate being here. So my name is Alan Meyer. I'm the CEO of Mach 1, Meyer Oil Company, DBA Mach 1. Second generation. My dad and uncle started the company. Now we are, me, my brother, and cousin have started to take over the process. We are at 23 retail stores, pretty much all operations, no wholesale, very little wholesale is probably a better way of saying it. And then within that, we've got mostly convenience stores, but we do have 5 truck stops. And kind of our focus for the company has been, we have a very broad liquor section inside of our stores. We're very big into car wash. I just mentioned the truck diesel. We are now getting into food service. We have 4 Little Caesars. We also have a proprietary program called Kate's Kitchen, and we have a fried chicken program with Champs. Another interesting part of our business is, I know a hot topic in the industry is self-checkout.
Yep.
We've got self-checkout at 8 of our locations, and that has been a big focus of ours to bring that out to pretty much company-wide. Last thing I'd probably touch on is pretty much all of our stores are new to industry. We don't really acquire stores. A typical store that we're building today is about 9,000 to 11,000 square feet, typically on the interstate and typically the truck diesel.
Thanks, Alan. So I guess just to start off, can you tell us about what are the most important things you think that Mach 1 is doing as an organization right now? Can you tell us a little about some of the, I know you're really into a lot of innovative areas of technology within the convenience store industry. Can you touch on some of those things that you're doing today?
Absolutely. I am a very progressive retailer. A lot of the people in my company would say to a fault because we're constantly changing stuff. But the way I look at it is, in a vacuum, a convenience store is a commoditized industry. Most of our consumers don't really differentiate our fuel from our competitors' fuel. When you look at 95% of the products inside of our store, that being grocery, candy, ice, liquor, the bag of Skittles inside of our store is the exact same bag of Skittles that our competitor has. So how do you differentiate a commoditized presentation? To me, that is about being progressive, being leading edge, using technology to make these changes. So I've referenced self-checkout. To me, self-checkout is both a marketing tool and a efficiency tool. So from a marketing side, self-checkout brings an experience by the customer that they know they don't have to wait in line. To me, I'm a very impatient person, so me as a customer really like self-checkout. I always know when I go to stores that have it, I don't have to wait in line to go get it. And then from a labor efficiency standpoint, it's kind of self-explanatory that it really helps out with both ends. So that's been a big focus of ours to find things like that. Other things are
a lot of fine tuning.
Yes, exactly. Broom, on-store delivery. We're a very pro-technological company.
So I guess the title of today's presentation was driving convenience with data. So what makes data so important to you as a retailer?
So to me, how we can evolve our business is we have to make changes, and that's the only way you can improve is to try out different things. We have tried a multitude of different marketing ideas, operational tools, and it has failed. But just because it failed doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. If you never fail, then you're not evolving as a company.
Right.
Yeah. But how do you gauge success or failure? And that is so difficult to do on any type of operational decision you do in your company. You make a change, and so many times when I talk to peers in my industry is hey, I did this and it's working great. Well, usually my follow-up question is, well, how do you know it's working great? And
is it gut or
you get a lot of
really
great,
know?
you get a lot of great answers
Yeah.
that you don't really get an answer to your question.
Yeah.
That's what data is. Data is telling you how well you're performing, both as a baseline and how well you perform when you make those changes. And data is ultimately telling you what your customers are trying to tell you, is whether it's a operational decision, a marketing decision, a price elasticity decision. The data is going to tell you if you made the right decision or not, but it's got to be available for you to look at. Data drives the results that the decisions that operations makes.
Yeah. So I think in the ways we work together, I think you'd probably agree that we changed the way that you look at data over the last
Without question
period of time we've been working together, and the amount and the organization of that as well. But let's just first start with why did you decide to work with Tyga?
Yeah. So got a cold call from Tyga late last year. Didn't even know what you guys were selling, to tell you the truth, and don't know why I took the cold call, but agreed to do it. And Bill was good enough to do the webinar for me, and I think it was an hour-long webinar. Yeah. And oh man, I was hooked. I was sold hook, line, and sinker at the end of that. And ultimately, what the message from Bill and the message from Tyga is if you got a source of data that is in a place that we can grab, we'll grab it, throw it into a universal database that you could put in the context of all your sources of data, and then we will work with you on putting in a format that works best for you. I have heard that sales pitch several times. I've been with this company for 16 years now. I can't count how many times I've heard that sales pitch. And usually it fails, and it fails for one of two reasons. Either one, the business intelligence ends up, or the data capture ends up being very small in scope, that they can only grab a very small amount
only
of
integrate
data
with the one thing,
exactly.
Or this thing,
and in our store, there are about 10 to 15 different things that has data for you to grab. And if you're only grabbing one of them, there's no context to what you're grabbing. The other one is the guy that does say you can grab all of it, and they fail midstream. They never get to the finish line.
They can't organize it. They can't structure it for
exactly, because it takes so long to grab these things from all these sources and to put in the format, and then it just kind of dies on the vine before it actually comes to fruition. When Bill told me in that first webinar that we will have your data within a week, I didn't believe him, but I said let's go ahead, let's try it. So we did one store, and he didn't do it in a week. He did it in like half a week. It was like half the time. I was just mind blown on like that Wednesday when I pulled up the portal and I saw, well, there's that store, it's data. Like, holy cow. So we ran that for, I think, 6 weeks, and then it was proved that this is the real deal. This is our answer. So we ran it out company wide.
How long did it take to run the whole chain?
And that was Greg was running that part of it, and me and Greg and my IT guy worked together. Within 3 weeks, we had all of our company data in there. And then not only did we have our company data in there, our servers had about 1.5 years data stored in those servers. And so I wasn't just looking at the data that they were grabbing the day that you guys started pulling the data.
Right.
I could go back to see how our company performed 6 months ago. So, to me, metrics is gauged in 2 ways over time in comparison across stores. You can do the comparison across stores the second the integration's done, but it was going to take a very long time to add context for trends. Not without that scenario. History, but it was literally that next day. I was looking at stores like, man, we really were bad in that month at that store. Things that we never would have caught. And to touch that, just to circle back on the data part of it, data is an invaluable tool to gauge operations. The problem with data is the amount of it. Mm-hmm. And you could spend more time analyzing data than you ever can actually doing something off that analysis. What you need is speed. Speed is the key to data, is grabbing it and then putting it in a format and then telling the person looking at it, this is what's important. This may not have been important last week, but it's important this week. You need to look at this and we need to address this.
Alerting them to what matters to them.
Exactly. And
making it understandable.
That is what differentiates. Before we came on with you guys, I had this report over here, I had this report over here, I'd have this report over here. And we'd have people in-house that could try to put into an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF or whatever you want to look at, but it's still a shotgun amount of data that you have to comb through to find stuff. When it is in an interactive portal, it's like that, and it starts just screaming out, hey, you've got a problem here. And that's the key to data.
Can you touch on how your ability to react, and then also your depth of understanding of your data changed from us working together? Before, I think you were day and month reports and stuff like that. What's the difference about what you're working with our Store Creek platform and how it's organized that gives you a leg up?
So we had a daily sales report, and then we had a monthly profit report, and it was done in a format where our operations people, so me, I have a COO, and then we have our DMs, and then we have the store managers, and they were all getting some form of those daily sales reports, but it was not in the context of, it was really difficult to give them in one spreadsheet how that compares. We're doing year over year data, but what happened, there's 11 months in between those two spreadsheets.
Right. What's happened more recently?
Exactly.
Is there a trend from this year? Was the data from the pandemic, is that even valid?
Yeah, exactly. So we actually, so before we went with you guys last year, we skipped a year. So I said, toss out 2020, that's meaningless. So we were comparing 2021 to 2019. And you're looking at these huge volatilities, but all we had was two numbers. Well, you start trying to throw in more of that, especially when you get to the ops COO or DM level.
Right.
These people are very busy people. They don't have time to be looking at spreadsheets all day to analyze stuff, to execute stuff. What we need is, what you guys provide us is, let me look at it this month compared to last month. And if I see something, okay, well, all right, there's something there. Now, in a couple clicks of a button, you start putting more context, and it can go store by store. You can start changing trend lines. It's all right there. You're not having to reach out to our accounting department and say, hey, would you create this spreadsheet, this spreadsheet, this spreadsheet? Because if it's not quick, people say that they spend time on spreadsheets and that they're going to do this, and this is how we're going to improve. From my experience in our company is, if you don't have quick access to it, you can talk all day long about how you're eventually going to do it. You will never get there.
You just don't have the time.
You don't have the time.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Retail operations is a big time suck. And so it's more about efficiency than anything else.
Right. I think you mentioned the NACS categorization, being able to have apples across your store.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're using that within Mach 1, and then also maybe we can talk a little bit more about some of the things you're doing with your checkout, self-checkouts, and labor and balancing customer service?
Yes, absolutely. So first, on your question on the NACS standard.
Yeah.
So we have our internal departments that we have for any given category, and that is snack, grocery, same thing most people have, but what we call it may not be what you call it, may not be what this retailer calls. So it's very hard for us to compare from a 10,000 foot view at the category level, because we don't know if we're even comparing the same thing.
Right.
Without us doing anything, you guys said, well, that bag of Skittles NAC says that bag of Skittles is this, that monster is this. We didn't do anything. And now all of a sudden we can speak the language of what NACS tells us we should speak, which other peers in the industry who are doing the same thing, now we are talking the same language.
Yeah,
we know we're comparing. It's so hard when you start saying, well, you're doing really good in that, and I'm really bad at that. But are we even talking about the same thing? So you got to spend all the time to get that out of the way before you even try to address what you originally were even looking at. And feeding off of that, I'm in a peer group called study groups.
Yeah.
And We have 12 retailers in my group. They are some of the most phenomenal people I've ever met in my life. And most of them, I try every day to be a little bit better so I can be as close as they are, because they're just a phenomenal group of people. But, we spend 2 days in a room saying, okay, you do really good at this, you do really good at that, but how do we understand how to get there, and what are we even talking about? You're taking all that out of the equation so we can all talk the same thing, and it just saves so much time. Now I've digressed enough. I forgot your second question on that.
So yeah, I probably should have asked them separately, but the same type of thing, but only focused in on you're doing a lot of things with you mentioned earlier with you're rolling out self-checkouts,
Yes,
locations.
yeah.
You're doing a lot of things to optimize that. You're also doing a lot of things to optimize labor and customer service. How are you using the real-time customer traffic data and those sorts of things to help you in those areas?
So self-checkout, I know that is a very overwhelming experience for retailers, and it was and is a very overwhelming experience for us. You've got a lot of moving parts there, and you need the customer to buy into that experience. You need the employee to buy in that experience. It's all about completely changing how you go to market at one of these stores. And before we were with you guys, well, I guess how I gauge the success of self-checkout is overall transaction counts. How do they perform relative to the other stores in our company? Our transaction counts going up or down when you try to take out everything else involved in that. Given the volatility of price of fuel, price of everything, and COVID, there's so much volatility in transaction counts in general. So trying to look at it from your spreadsheet, that really takes out some of the noise to try to gauge that performance on that. The other part about that is percentage of transaction counts on self-checkout as a percentage of the standard checkout. So how we typically do it is 3 self-checkouts, one traditional register. And I know based on our transaction counts that if those self-checkouts aren't getting used, that we are too busy of a store and we've got really long lines to try to do all of that on one register.
Mm-hmm.
So we have set standards on what our expectations are for the percentage of transactions that go on self-checkout. That, before we signed on with you guys, was somebody, mainly me, logging into that store's back office, pulling up each individual cashier report, looking, and the self-checkout is treated as a cashier, saying, okay, that one did 52 transactions, that one did 75 transactions, that one did 100 transactions, plugging that into a little spreadsheet, and then it shows the percentage at the bottom of it using the formula. That is not a very easy thing to execute on a wide scale over a long range. You guys are able to have that at 2 clicks, so I can pull up. So every morning the first thing I do is I go in the office, and the first thing I do is check competitor gas prices, because that's just what we're in. The second thing I do every morning is pull up your guys' website, my portal, and I've got 4 or 5 things that I always want to look at on how we did the previous day.
Yeah.
One of them is self-checkout metrics, which is based on the live customer traffic feed like you're talking about.
What are some of those other ones?
So overall sales. So fuel inside sales, fuel sales, diesel sales, category sales by how it's done this day versus the same day 4 weeks ago. Then you start looking at things for, what do we not sell any of? So car washes being a big one. If we didn't sell any car washes, well, that probably means our car wash. Yeah, our car wash is probably down.
Yeah.
And so things that we didn't sell any of, or things that we underperformed on that you typically sell this much, and now you're only sold this much, those types of things. So it's mostly operations, because I'm sure everybody that's in retail on this webinar knows it is more difficult today to execute operationally than I ever thought this would be the case before COVID, from a staffing, training, turnover perspective. you have to try to, as best as you can, stay on top of stores to make sure that it's getting executed the way it is. Well, the bigger you get, the harder that is. You have to have the data there to look at it.
And one of the things that Bill talked to you about early on that you were, you know, helped to drive your decision was the whole concept that we have a Tyga of our versionless platform. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what it's been like as an idea partner with Tyga to
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So one thing, I guess let me talk about that, lead that into a broader conversation of what I think how Tyga stands out in the industry. One, kind of like I touched on before, you were already, I think I may have been your first customer with our point of sale. And then we worked through that, like I said, in 3 days to start getting the data. I remember calling you guys and saying, hey, I've got this Comdata Smart Desk.
Oh, yeah.
And saying, hey, man, it'd be great if I could get that data into you guys as well. So we can just start doing that because we were mainly pulling that information. So I sent that off to Greg. 6 weeks after we started with you company-wide, something like that. It wasn't, once I showed him where the data was, which that took us about 3 weeks to figure out where to tell him. Once Greg knew where it was, it was 2 days and that data was in our portal showing us our diesel sales. Just the ease of grab. Once we have data to give you, it's just been phenomenal. Now, what I always tell people, because I'm a big believer in your platform, obviously, what I always tell people is what's the most exciting about it for me is Tyga has proven that they have the ability to grab the data, and they have this base model of how to present to you the data that they're grabbing and how to create decisions off of that. But whether it be Matt, whether it be Bill, whether it be John, whether it be Greg, you guys constantly are hitting up, okay, what else can we do for you? What else can we create? What do you want us to do? And with Greg, I remember I sent him a report one time and said, hey, would you do this, this, and this? And 24 hours later, that report was in there. I think of you guys, what I say is you are kind of like a mold of clay. We've got this company that has got this base, and how far down the rabbit hole it goes. I'm really excited. I can't believe where Tyga is today, but man, where Tyga can go is just absolutely phenomenal. And I talked to people in your company about ideas that other people smarter than me on where you guys are going with them. I'm like, oh my God, that is a great idea. I said, yes, go do that. And the best part about it is it's all web-based software. It's versionless software. So you go find someone way smarter than me that comes up with something. I wake up one day, go on there. I'm like, oh, hey, look, a new report from Tyga. And I pull it up. I'm like, oh, wow, that is a great way to look at it. I never would have thought of that. Yeah. And you start going down the rabbit hole of whether it goes to user groups or context. Man, I just can't believe the roadmap of the vision of what I think you guys are going to be, even beyond what you are today.
I like it. Yeah. So I think just one more question before we get to the Q&A portion here.
Yeah.
I guess if there was one thing you could say to a colleague in the industry about why they should work with us.
Yep.
What do you think that one thing is about Tyga that makes us different?
So the biggest difference I personally feel is so I work with companies of all sizes. Yeah. And some really big, some really small, and they obviously have pros and cons to both. What has blown me away is, the key decision makers of Tyga. I know all you guys personally, and I've known you guys from the day we signed up. I met you literally, I think the next day after I signed that contract.
Oh yeah.
And we basically said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I met Bill in the webinar. Greg, I spend most time with Greg, and Greg is constantly saying, all right, what can we do for you? What can we do for you? The level of service, not only from the entire company, that is unbelievable in itself, but the people that have the power to to decide on how this company's changes that you want to make, and whether that be from a reporting standpoint, from a data graph standpoint, the culture that you guys have and the ownership group, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I'm a family-owned business. And what I always tell our employees, our associates, our customers is, man, give me a call. Whatever it is, we'll get it figured out. And I've said that since the day I started in this company. That is a mentality that you guys practice more so than any partner I deal with.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So, for the sake of time, I think we should probably hop over and see what we have on the question portion here. All right. So, first one that we have here. So kind of looking at return on investment for Tyga Storekeep. So Alan, how would you compare the return on investment for Storekeep to other C-store technology software?
Absolutely. So the one of the things that I look at today, what does my business model look like with $5.50 gas on a very small margin,
right? And
what am I able to do to maintain profitability? There's increasing sales, both gallons and non-fuel. That is pretty much an impossible task when you are asking them to give you $150 at the pump.
All right.
Our non-fuel sales have absolutely gone down since fuel prices have gone where they've gone. So let's take increased sales out of it. Now it's increased margins or lower operation costs. When you talk about ROI on Tyga, the biggest thing today for me is analyzing elasticity of product by category. Okay. So there's no question we have to maximize our margin by product, and to capture more margin dollars to maintain profitability. But the elasticity of a product, the elasticity is not the same by category or even by product. If you've got an item that is it's got a very high loyalty and it doesn't and you don't have a lot of differentiation, or your competitors don't offer nearly as much, car wash being another big one of those. If take an extreme example, if you're the only car wash in a small market, well, then you got a pretty inelastic product there that you can maybe maximize margin dollars.
Right.
The bag of Skittles is obviously the exact opposite of that. Tobacco is obviously another big focus that you have a really tight margin because that's a very price conscious shopper. But you got, our typical store has 5,000 SKUs in it. So to try to
you don't really have room to guess there.
No, you don't. Yeah, exactly.
You need that timely data.
To try to manually go through velocities, like, we'll go to our vendors and they'll give us velocity reports, but it's not timed price changes. And then you start trying to do the math of that to margin.
Right.
You're not seeing the margin dollars without spending a lot of time and doing a lot of math. What you guys are able to do is say, here's the new price and here's what your profit is. By you doing that, here's how much more money you made.
Right.
So elasticity, I think, is a big thing today in today's world for ROI on Tyga. Mm-hmm. 2 is efficiency. So I touched on the self-checkout, but even if you're not self-checkout, labor efficiency, the cost of labor has gone up 28%, I think, on the last NACS article. So every labor hour you have in your store is costing you 28% more than it did pre-COVID. When I look at labor, inefficient labor, when you can't react to changes in the marketplace with labor, you got to do one of 2 things. You're either overstaffed and providing great customer service, but you're overstaffed at a huge cost to the bottom line, or you are running really tight on labor and providing a bad experience for your customer base. The only way to change that is to constantly stay on top of the data and adjust your scheduling based on the sales that you're seeing at stores. you can't make that a long process to grab that data before you can adjust the changes you're seeing.
We got there's another similar one here that kind of touches on some of the stuff you were already just talking about there. Also has any fun stories or insights from your more near-term analysis of like price elasticity and those sorts of things? Like,
you mean what? Any interesting stories I found from the data?
Yeah.
Operationally, yeah. So. For one, so self-checkout, it would be probably the first thing that I would show. So just delivering the bland message of, we got to push self-checkout, so on and so forth. It was really hard to get that needle to move. Giving the people at store level access to the data and then make it competitive. And then we actually incentivize them to hit certain KPIs and then give them access to see it. It is amazing when you give lower down level, so whether that be store level, associate, store manager up, access to be able to see their own data and put in the context. It's amazing how fast things change when you put it into a data format. Another a more specific interesting story, my COO was at one of our stores yesterday, and there was a VP of a very big manufacturer of a product inside of our stores, inside of everybody's store that's on this. And it wasn't even a planned meeting. They just happened to bump into each other, and he introduced himself and said, "I'm the VP of X," and I don't want to say who X was. And my COO introduced himself. The VP instantly went over to his space and said, "Why is my space only X and my competitor is 3 times X?" He pulled up Tyga and said, "You're only 15% of the sales," and pulled it up, and literally on that spreadsheet says, "If you want your sales up," he goes, "let's figure out how to do it. But why should I give you more space?" When you start talking to vendors and manufacturers, and they kept trying to tell you how big their product is or how much sales they do or how valuable they are to our store.
Exactly
our
how
COO
valuable
has said
it is to your
multiple
customers.
times. We're not going off of your data. We're going to go off of my data.
Right.
And here's what my data says on how valuable you are.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good story. This one, I think you answered a little bit like during our talk earlier, but access to old data within the platform. Can Tyga access and use old data we already have in our databases and use that in conjunction with new data? Absolutely. So when we talk specifically about data, and Alan's talked about a variety of different areas, a lot of the data sources that we pull from are trying to get as close to the real source as possible. So we like to pull directly from point of sale. We like to pull directly off the ATG and directly off your price book and sources like that in real time. And so we're pulling full basket level detail from the point of sale, including all the promotions, all of the individual item sales, any discounts, everything about that market basket. And then we're doing that across pretty much every point of sale platform that's out there. Same thing with ATGs, same thing with price book and those sorts of things. And so it doesn't matter if you have one vendor at 5 of your stores for point of sale and another vendor at 10 of your stores, and then a third one at another store. Or Alan mentioned earlier, he has com data for NCR. And NCR. So com data on the diesel side in the store, and then the NCR in that same store. Those things can be mixed and matched together. Once it gets into the Tyga platform, it's apples to apples in the NACS category standards down to the individual item, individual SKUs. So you can say, okay, how am I performing on Mountain Dew and the promotions related with 20 ounces and their take rates, all the way up to how is my packaged bev category performing across all my stores, or how is my package my cold packaged bev performing against my alcoholic set in my cooler. So I hope that helps to answer that. Yes, we can pull from if you have different systems and different fuel brands, different store profiles, it doesn't matter. We work with all of them and integrate well with all of them. Let's see. And also on top of that, the old data. Alan answered that earlier on in the discussion.
Yeah, for me, when it pulls it in,
I think we got 2 years back for you.
So like for us, we're NCR, so there's a site server that stores all the old data as long as it starts overrunning once the hard drive gets filled. But so whatever we had, you guys grabbed, and then whatever John talked a lot about there, and then you can talk about product relationships and all that. Was anything you're wanting to look at, there is a drop down that you just click on, say yesterday, last month, last year, year to date, start doing comparisons. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even tell you a week after what was old, what was new, other than the fact that you looked at the date at the top.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. How do you see this changing your business? You talked about how you see us growing over the next 5 years and stuff like that. But how do you see this changing your business and how you operate over the next 5 years? Where do you think it's going to take you?
To me, this Weber was going to have to take another 30 minutes. So there's a lot to that. So right now, we're mainly focused on Tyga from a key decision maker level. But that's not where I ultimately see this going. I want this all the way down to the store manager level, mm-hmm. and then start broken out. And so they can start looking at their own performance. You take a great, motivated, highly skilled store manager, and you give them tools like this, man.
That's like what you're saying. I
walk in. I went to.
They can compete.
Yeah, exactly. I walked in. I did a drive yesterday. I went to 6 of our stores. And, they started going into, and they take me to the display and they say, hey, go look at this display that I built. And they're so proud of it. And they want to, show that our sales are doing this, this, and this. Well, for them to be able to go and say, we created this liquor display, or we created this novelty display, or look what we did with our food service side, to be able to just have instant access and not wait for our accounting partners to send out a report. You get the right person, and they are consumed about proving what they thought was going to work worked, and giving them the tools to be able to see it and then prove to themselves of what they decided. So that's first and foremost. 2, we talked about the NAC standard and the comparison tools. Right now I'm looking at trends over time and trends across stores. What I want to see from Tyga is user groups where we're getting together with your top performers and we're having conversations, and there is not a single thing in my stores that I thought of myself. Almost everything is I've stolen from somebody smarter than me and said, that's a great idea. I want to do that. And that's what Tyga is. It is me. You're a retail owner like I am. We start looking at stuff. You look at me and see what I do better. I look at you and see what you do better. And then the tide rises for both of us. That is what I see for a 5-year vision for Tyga. That's what gets me excited.
Oh, okay. All right. So Alan, we're kind of running up on time here, but I just wanted to take a second. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience before we call it into the session?
Yeah. The one thing I would take away is, like I said, I referenced the cold call. It's one thing for us to sit here and talk and you guys just hear 10,000 foot view. It's a whole other thing to see the actual data and to say, holy cow, what could I do with that? The rabbit hole on Tyga and what it can do for you is so deep. We could spend 3 days talking about this and we wouldn't cover everything you guys could do. My biggest takeaway from a peer in the industry on what I should do, I said, go spend 30 minutes with them and they'll show you. And then where your mind goes with it is way beyond what I could tell you to do, because what's important to me may not be important to you, may not be important to somebody else on this webinar. But the great thing is if it is a data point that can be measured,
You can start where you're focused and
you
build on
will
it.
provide them what's important to them.
Yes.
It's tailored to the customer. That is probably the biggest point to hammer home.
Start where you need.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I'd just like to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Alan, for taking the time out of your day to talk with me. I hope it was really informative and entertaining for everybody, and I appreciate everyone's time today.
Thanks, guys.
All right.